Undoubtedly, each of us has heard the legend of Robin Hood, where this noble robber robbed the rich in order to distribute their gold to the simple poor. Thus, he even became a folk hero and could always count on the help of peasants and other representatives of the poorest segments of the population. One way or another, the image of this hero was liked by millions of boys around the world, and probably there is nothing surprising. One of them even imbued with the exploits of the elusive hero to the very depths of his soul, and this young man's name was Charles Handsome Floyd. In the newspaper of that time, he was called the Robin Hood of our days, and the number of banks he robbed is simply amazing, but everything is in order. Charles Arthur Floyd was born on February 3, 1904, in a small town called Bertull, Georgia. Unlike many famous criminals of the time, Charles was a rather calm and even sweet child. He tried not to get into fights, studied diligently and respected his elders. In 1911, the Floyd family moved to Oklahoma, and then to Arkansas and Kansas. Constantly changing his place of residence has a bad effect on the young guy, and for 18 years he committed the first crime in his life, or rather, robbed a post office. True, his catch can hardly be called large, because it amounted to only $3.50. Some of Floyd's acquaintances subsequently claimed that the guy himself was very worried about the crime he had committed and even repented, promising that he would not do anything like that again. In general, this seems to be true, because for the next few years Charles Floyd behaved with restraint, and also married a decent girl from a decent family named Ruby. It seemed that the guy's life had improved, but a serious financial crisis hit the United States, and Charles lost the opportunity to feed his family. In order to somehow improve the situation, he again decided to commit a crime. In 1925, Floyd robbed a cash collector in the city of St. Louis and hit a pretty decent jackpot, namely $11,000, but the punishment was not long in coming. For armed robbery, Charles received a 5-year prison sentence, but in fact only served 3 of them. When he was released, he swore that he would never go to prison again. But to his great misfortune, his wife did not want to live with the criminal and simply divorced him. For Charles, this was the last deterrent, and after that, as soon as he was left alone, he rushed into all seriousness. Already in 1929, police from Kansas City arrested Floyd on suspicion of robbery, but there was not enough evidence, and 3 days later he was released. Just 2 months later the situation repeated itself, but again there was not enough evidence. After Charles became familiar with the local police, he decided to move to Pueblo, but there he was convicted of vagrancy. After serving 2 months in prison and paying a $50 fine, Floyd is sent to Toledo. There he robs a bank, but again falls into the hands of the police. Considering his past merits, the judge decides to finally rid polite society of Charles Floyd and sends him to the Ohio County Prison. It is worth noting here that this prison at one time was one of the harshest in the country, and not everyone was able to spend 12 years there. But Charles managed to do something incredible. He simply escaped from prison just a day after his arrival. This brought him a certain authority in criminal circles and quite a bit of fame. Moreover, he analyzed his past crimes and came to the conclusion that it was better not to go into business alone, and assembled a gang of local criminals. After this, the golden years of Handsome George Floyd began. He and his gang robbed one bank after another, and no one could stop him. By the way, Floyd did this very sophisticatedly. Firstly, during the robbery of another bank, he behaved with restraint, spoke civilly and never hid his face. Secondly, he always demonstratively destroyed mortgages on the farms and houses of ordinary Americans. And thirdly, during his escape, Floyd scattered money that ordinary people collected. Here you need to understand that there was a Great Depression in the yard, and for most workers, mortgage payments became simply unaffordable. The banks took away all their farms and houses from them, they were left with nothing, which is why Charles was a real salvation for them, and they truly respected him for his actions. It should also be noted that Handsome Floyd got his nickname for a reason. The thing is that one of the elderly bankers, describing Charles's appearance, noted that he looks like a very cute boy with cheeks like apples. Of course, such a nickname irritated him, but for ordinary people he remained Handsome Floyd, who was able to rob 51 banks in 2 years. Charles himself considered himself a correct criminal who acted in the interests of the people. He openly despised Bonnie and Clyde, calling them stupid scumbags. And when this couple appeared on his territory, he immediately told all his assistants not to help them in any way. But be that as it may, for police officers and FBI agents the handsome man was not a folk hero or Robin Hood. On the contrary, after the liquidation of Johnny Dillinger, he became public enemy number one. Moreover, the Federal Bureau of Investigation claimed that Charles Floyd was a direct participant in the Kansas City massacre, although this has not been proven even today. The handsome man himself claimed that he had nothing to do with this and even wrote a letter to the newspaper, trying to prove his innocence. But on December 23, 1932, Charles's criminal career almost ended. During a raid on one of the banks in Oklahoma, Floyd and his gang got into a shootout with the police. 3 criminals died on the spot, and the handsome man himself miraculously survived and even managed to escape, although he received several wounds. There is a version that he was saved by a homemade bulletproof vest, but whether this is true or not is not known for certain. After some time he was able to recover and form a new gang. 23-year-old Adam Richetti entered there, as well as a very young Elliot. The newly minted criminals continued their raids with Charles, but apparently, he was quite fed up with this type of activity and Charles and Adam disappeared from the police's radar for several years. Only on October 10, 1934, they robbed the bank again. And as it became known, this was done in order to find money for the trip. After evading the police, Floyd and Richetti picked up their girls in a new car and hit the road. But on the night of October 18, there was heavy fog, and the criminals were unable to control the car, causing the car to crash into a telephone pole. The accident occurred on a country road and essentially the company found itself in an open field. The men sent the girls into the city to find a tow truck, while they themselves waited for them near the car. At the same time, a local resident named Joe Fruman was passing by the scene of the accident. The guys in fashionable suits seemed very suspicious to him and the farmer immediately reported the incident to the sheriff. To verify the information received, a sheriff named Falls took several police officers with him and went to the scene. Seeing the police, Adam Richetti immediately rushed into the forest, and Floyd began shooting back with a revolver. He hit the sheriff's leg several times, after which he also disappeared into the forest. To detain the bandits, the police called in reinforcements in the form of FBI agents. By the way, Malvin Horace Purvis, the same agent who distinguished himself during the liquidation of the notorious John Dillinger, arrived to them. Richetti was the first to fall into the hands of the security forces. They found him while combing the forest, but Handsome Floyd was hiding for 2 days longer. However, hunger forced him to go to a nearby farm to get food. The owner of the farm turned out to be an elderly widow. She told the story of a guy who allegedly came to the forest with a drunken company to hunt, but accidentally got lost. The woman felt sorry for the guy and she decided to cut him up. While Charles was enjoying an excellent lunch, the police and FBI had already converged on the farm. Seeing them, he jumped out of the house and hid behind the barn. Agent Purvis spotted the fugitive and called out to him, "Floyd, get out on the road or we'll shoot." Charles decided to try his luck and ran into the forest across the field. But a police officer named Charles SMT was able to hit Floyd several times, after which he fell to the ground. Immediately after this, 3 police officers ran up to the body. Floyd pulled out a revolver, but did not have time to shoot, as the officers knocked the weapon out of his hands. Agent Purvis was the last to approach Charles's body. He said, "Handsome Floyd, you are arrested for a crime against the nation, give the names of your accomplices and the places where they are hiding." To which the criminal replied, "I am Charles Floyd and it seems you killed me, you are going to the devil," and a second later he left this world. On October 26, 1934, Charles Arthur Floyd was buried in Akinci, Oklahoma. About 40,000 people from all over America attended his funeral. This is exactly how the life story of the legendary robber, who was on the lips of every U.S. resident in those years, ended. And even to this day he remains one of the most famous figures of that time.